on this computer. Okay, we are good to go. I'm sorry about all this technical craziness. Last week, we read the first part of the introduction. And in the meantime, when I walked into Hakerem this week, we had a great question from Esther, who is sitting here in back of me. You can't see her. Okay? And the question she asked is, she mentioned another book, another famous book, or a relatively famous book, which is called Sefer Hamidot. Only that book, we know who the author was. It was written by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in the 18th century, early 19th century. And he wrote a book called Sefer Hamidot, which talks about, humility, and it talks about cruelty and mercy and all kinds of character traits. So she asked me if there's any relationship between that book and the book that we're studying right now. And instead of me telling you the answer that I gave, I want you to answer. What do you think the answer is?
Avi, can you be a little closer to your mic? You're kind of faint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's not just me. Okay.
Did you hear the question?
Yes, heard, but it's hard to hear.
Is it better now?
Little.
A little better now. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, what do you think the answer is?
Well, Avi, as you said last week, Sefer Hamidot is a generic term, as it were.
Genre, right?
It's not a title, it's a genre. The field of ethics in the Middle Ages, and even after the Middle Ages.
You're still faint.
I'm still faint with the microphone?
I hear you great.
Because I'm pretty close.
I hear you great.
Oh, okay.
It's better now than it was. It's not
Okay. Now I'm as close as I can really possibly be.
No,
You're fine.
you sound great.
Not great?
Yes, great.
Yeah,
You
no,
sound
it's
great.
okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, so Marion's answer is correct. It is the field of ethics in the Middle Ages was called the field of midot. That is the name of the area of study. So Sefer Hamidot is a genre. It's not really a title. Okay, and I suggested last week that the author chose this genre as also to be his title, because he wanted to say that if you're looking for the real Sefer Hamidot, here it is. Don't go to Sefer Hamidot from somebody like Aristotle, or from somebody like the Arab philosopher Ibn Rushd, Averroes. Okay? Don't go to non-Jewish books. Come to a Jewish book. This is the Jewish book of Midot. Okay, and that's what he was trying to say by making use of that title. And that's why the thunder gets stolen when the book gets retitled as The Path of the Righteous. The Path of the Righteous, what kind of title is that? This book is about Midot. Okay, and it's meant to replace all the other books of Midot, especially the non-Jewish ones.
Avi, we hear you great. I don't know if you're a little, we can see your nose and your mustache. You're a little close to the camera. If we're going to watch you too,
That's because when I moved the computer, so then the picture changed. So let me try to repicture.
We can hear you. That's the most that we can hear you. Great. But, you know.
Okay.
Possible,
Can I ask somebody here in Kilat just to bring me my bottle of water for my bag? Oh,
It may also be if we all mute ourselves, his sound may be clear.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay.
Where's participants? Wait, we need participants. But I don't know where participants is.
We can all mute ourselves.
Okay, so do that. But here it pops up to admit. Hi, Kathy. Okay, so did you all mute yourselves? Svi now did. Okay. Okay. So do you hear me any better now?
Now we hear you great and see you great. You're a TV star.
All right. Okay. So let's go to our text. Our goal today is to finish the introduction and to read the important parts of the conclusion to the book. That's the part that you will be the first people ever to study in a group in 600 years. Okay, so let's go to where we were last week.
We left off on page 3, the third paragraph from the bottom.
It's just that Simcha formatted this so nicely, so the pagination will be a little bit different. Okay, I'm looking for the parable of the cooked dish. That's where we are now. Last week we saw the parable of the cooked dish, that every quality has its place. Some qualities you need a lot of, some you don't want to have more than a little of, but you need every single quality. And the parable for that is preparing a cooked dish. You need a good amount of meat, lots of vegetables, water, and seasonings. You only put in a little bit. You put in a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. If you put in too much salt, you can't eat it. But also, if you don't have enough meat, then it won't taste rich. Okay, he wasn't, I guess, promoting a modern diet, but that's not the issue. Okay, the issue is here. I'll read this again. If he puts in too little meat, the dish will be meager, and if he puts in too much salt, then the dish cannot be eaten because it is too salty. And thus it is with all the traits. If he puts in too little of what he requires, and puts in too much of what he requires but little, then the food will be spoiled. And the expert is the one who can take care of every ingredient who can take of every ingredient the proper measure. Then the food will be pleasant and sweet to those who eat of it. What I suggested at the end of the class last week is that this parable allows for, and perhaps was even consciously designed to say, that each human being needs to measure his or her midot differently. Okay? Take something like anger versus pleasantness. Okay? Most of us would probably agree that anger is something you need to some degree, but not too much. Maybe like the salt. Okay? And pleasantness is something that you need a lot of, but again, not too much. Okay, because if you're pleasant all the time, that also doesn't work. Okay, you need a little bit of anger, you need a lot of pleasantness, but you need both of them. Now, what this parable allows for is that each person is his or her own dish. Okay, in other words, if I was trying to make myself into a better Avi, and I was trying to proportion my midot, my character traits, into their ideal proportions, well, I should do that, and it's very good if I do that. But when Don does it, Don's proportions will be differently. Why? Because Don is a different dish than Avi. And Miriam, who's sitting here, is a different dish than Don, and so is Esther, and so are all the people who are listening on Zoom, whose names I cannot see because all of a sudden I cannot see the pictures. I'll make them big so I can see you for a second, okay? Each person needs to think about himself or herself and ask, which midot should I change the proportions for in order to be a better me? Okay? But Tzvi shouldn't be looking to be a better Avi. And Avi shouldn't be looking to be a better Miriam. Okay? I should be looking to be a better Avi. And in order to be a better Avi, let's say I need less anger and I need more patience, let's say. Okay? My ideal proportions will be ideal for me, but not necessarily ideal for another person. Okay? All right. What this suggests is Miriam is asking something, yes? You want me to lower the text? Oh, because the pictures are hiding the text for the people on the screen. Hakerem. Hold on. So I'll minimize the pictures. Okay. Now, let me go down in the text. And here is the nimshal, the similar manner are the qualities of a person. Okay, therefore, when a man weighs his qualities in the balance of the scales, let him take every quality in its proper measure. He should not take less and he should not add. In this way, he will reach the ultimate goodness. Okay, this is all really nice. Okay, and I think it's a parable that all of us can use. But there is still something the book has not done yet. There's something the author hasn't said yet. And it's the question that we left off of with class last week. What is the yardstick? Okay? If it's Elisheva trying to make herself into the perfect Elisheva, and it's Avi trying to make himself into the perfect Avi, we still haven't been told what the yardstick is. What is the yardstick for finding the ideal Elisheva towards which Elisheva should channel herself? And so on for every person. How do you know how much anger you need or don't need? And the same is true for any other midah, character trait. In other words, to express it in terms of the parable, how do you know how the dish should taste? Who determines what the most tasty avi would be? Okay? Who determines or what determines what the most tasty Sharon would be? What is the yardstick, or who gives the measurement? Okay? So Miriam is saying, aha, this is a religious book, a very traditional book, where you've yet to see how traditional it is. It's pretty traditional. So Miriam says, it must be the Torah that tells us. That's a great answer. The only issue is that the Torah, help me, the Torah doesn't tell us. The Torah tells us all kinds of things. It tells us do this and don't do that. But the Torah never tells us what the proper proportion for a character trait is. Yeah? So Yofi. So in back of me here at Kilat Hakerem, Esther suggested maybe experience tells us how to measure. Now that's really good because, we learn from experience. We have too much anger and we get hurt or we hurt other people. Okay, we have too much generosity and we reduce ourselves to poverty. Okay, you can learn from experience, but yes. Yeah. I think what Esther is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that maybe I was wrong in my response to Miriam. I said to Miriam, the Torah, it may say something about anger here and there, okay, but it never tells you like what proportion of anger you need. It doesn't do that, okay? Esther, if I understood you correctly, Esther is suggesting, well, the Torah tells us how we ought to behave. Okay, and anger could make me behave in a way contrary to the Torah. So maybe in that sense, the Torah is telling me how much anger I need and how much of all the other character traits. So you backed up Miriam and you said we should also learn from experience. All of that is good. Let me tackle them one at a time. With experience, yes, we learn a lot from experience. But experience is not a yardstick. I'll explain why. It's not a yardstick. Let's say I get angry a lot and I end up hurting myself and others. Okay? Does that teach me that I need less anger? The answer is yes, on condition. The condition is, if that anger hurting myself is wrong, and if that anger hurting others is wrong, then yes, I need less anger. But what if what I got angry about was right? What if it was good that I hurt myself? What if it was good that I hurt others? Who's to say when something is wrong, when the results of anger are wrong? Okay? Let's say anger hurt me in my life. So if I am the measurement, if I determine and I see that anger has hurt my life, if I am the yardstick, then yes, experience taught me that anger is harmful and I need less of it. If I am the yardstick. But what if somebody else is the yardstick? What if somebody looks at me and says, you know, you were very angry at yourself and that was the right way. You should have been angry. Or maybe the first people you got angry at deserved it. Okay? If I am the measure, then I can learn from experience. By the way, even if somebody else is the measure, I can learn from experience. Let's say Miriam is the measure. And Miriam says, Avi, you're too angry, you're hurting people, and that's not nice. Okay? So if Miriam is the measurement, then it works. But somebody has to be deciding when it is hurtful or when it is bad. So it's okay. We said it's me, it's you. Now Miriam is suggesting it's society decides. Society in general decides that a person that angry, you know, is harmful. Okay.
How about if you're hurting people and things? I mean, this.
Oh, well, what's it?
You're hurting people. You're causing emotional pain. You're, I don't know, which would typically think of as bad.
Okay.
I know sometimes the anger can be good, and you have to have that yardstick. But there's certain things like if you're causing you're inflicting others. If you're causing emotional pain, that's not helping them at all. It's not, you know, to their good in any way.
Well, who determines if the pain is helping them or hurting them or doing something or not doing something? You can say that. You can say that. Another person can say that. Miriam is suggesting that society can say that and the law can say that. Okay? I got a surprise for all of you. The author's answer is none of the above. Not society, not the law, not even the Torah, by the way, okay? Even though this is a very traditional text. And it's not somebody else, and it's not even you yourself. None of these are the yardstick. Okay, what is the yardstick? We're about to find out. You should know and understand, I hope everyone sees the text, that he whose nature, one second, just a second. Okay, that he whose nature inclines him towards an evil quality, or one who is accustomed to an evil quality, does not take it to heart to repent of it, but always permits it to grow stronger, that this will bring him to a state where he will reject and loathe good qualities. He doesn't get to the yardstick yet, but what he does tell you is that moral imbalance is a sickness, okay? In other words, if you're angry too much, then you're not going to get disgusted of your anger. Rather, you're going to embrace your anger. Okay, you're going to justify it. You're going to strengthen it. I'm going to try to make the text go down. Then. And just as much pain and anguish and troubles are the sickness of the body, so are most of the evil traits the sickness of the soul. And just as the sickness of the body tastes the bitter is sweet and the sweet is bitter, and there is among those who are ill one that longs for food that is not good for him and hates good food, and all of this depends upon the extent of his sickness, so do people whose souls are sick long for and love evil traits, and they hate the good path or are too lazy to walk on it. And it is very hard for them according to the extent of their sickness. And thus Isaiah says concerning these men, woe unto them who call evil good and good evil, who change darkness into light and light into darkness, who change bitter into sweet and sweet into bitter. Okay? A healthy person knows what is healthy food. But a sick person wants to eat the things that make you sick. Okay? Maybe we could translate that into modern times, maybe even pre-modern times. Okay? If you habituate yourself to eat unhealthy food, then you develop a liking for it, and you'll eat it more and more. On the other hand, if you habituate yourself to eat healthy food, then you'll want to eat more and more of it. Those of you who did Rambam Maimonides with me might recognize this passage from the 8 chapters. It's actually an adaptation of something Maimonides wrote in the 8 chapters. Concerning these people, it is said, who leaves the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness. If your moral qualities are imbalanced, you are sick, and you will not even be able to tell what healthy looks like. In other words, for you yourself to be the yardstick is problematic. Because if you're sick, you won't be able to outline and to designate the ideal. So what do you do? What do you do if you're sick? What can you possibly do? Now, how and what is the correction for the sickness of the soul? Let them go to the wise men who are the healers of souls, and they will heal their illnesses with the traits, and they will teach them until they will restore them to the good path. And concerning those people who know their evil traits, but do not go to the wise men to heal them, Solomon said, the foolish despise wisdom and discipline. You may think at this point that he just gave you the yardstick. What's the yardstick? If your traits are out of balance, if you are sick ethically, then go for advice to someone who is an expert. Okay, going to the experts is very popular nowadays, right? You know, anything people discuss, well, what are the experts saying? You have to listen to the experts. So here he's telling you, look, you're not an ethical expert. Go to the experts. Ask the experts what the proper balance of character traits is. So, do you think he gave you the yardstick just now, or not?
No.
She said no. Explain why not.
Because I think it's definitely, it could be something he suggested you do, but I don't know. It seems too subjective.
It's too subjective. Well, when it comes to ethics, who is an expert?
Right. Sure.
Exactly.
Who are the ethical experts that you can rely upon? Your very choice of an expert is liable to reflect some kind of inner bias.
Right.
Excuse me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nihya b'dvaro.
Amen.
Todah Miriam. Now, he does indeed think that you should go to the ethical scholars, okay? But they are not the yardstick. As we will see, they too require a yardstick. This expert that you go to, this experienced psychologist who's going to help you straighten out your inner life. Well, what is that psychologist's yardstick?
Right. He has to go to a psychologist also.
Right. Yeah. Who's his psychologist? Very nice.
Right.
Okay. We still have not discovered the yardstick. But what he has told us so far is that if you realize that you have a problem, okay, a good thing to do is to go and get advice.
Expert advice. Yeah.
Okay? Advice is not the yardstick, but advice may help. Okay? Now I'd like to ask somebody on Zoom if somebody would be willing to continue reading the next paragraph.
From now how? From where?
From there are
I will.
many.
I will.
Okay, bevakasha.
There are many people whose desire is to take hold of the good path, but they do not know what is good for them, and they plan each day to attain the loftiest heights, but they do not reach it in all of their days. And this circumstance arises out of two causes. First, he does not know wherein he is lacking and does not perceive clearly his ugly ways. And he is like Reuben, who seeks for Simon, but would not recognize him even if he saw him. Even if he should seek for him all day, he will not find him, for though he approach him several times, he will not recognize him. Such is the case with this man. Even though he always thinks about what he ought to do and seeks to do the good deed, he will not attain it, for he does not know what he lacks. And there is a man who knows the bad qualities he possesses and plans to abandon them and take hold of good qualities. This man too will never attain the righteous path, for he is too lazy to seek out the good qualities properly. And he is like Reuben, who seeks Simon and does not know him, and nevertheless does not find him, because he does not seek him in the proper manner. Concerning this type of man, it is said, the tongue of the righteous is as choice silver.
Okay, thank you. So you need two things. First of all, you need the yardstick. If you can't recognize what proper, good, balanced traits are, then you will never find them. Okay? And this is the problem we've been dealing with, right? How do I know what balance I should aim for to make the most tasty avi? The second thing that he adds here is, even if I know what I should be, I won't get there unless I put in a lot of effort. If I'm too lazy, it won't happen. Okay? Okay, now he's going to give another analogy. Go on, please, Kathy.
I just wanted to ask quickly if you
Yes.
have time to tell us what, and he is like Reuben who seeks Simon, and immediately remember this from Bereshit, and can you tell us what does he mean?
What does he mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean the names from Sefer Breshit, Reuven and Shimon.
Yeah, of course, that I understand.
In
What
rabbinic
incident?
literature, when you want to give an example of two people dealing with each other, but they're just two anonymous people, they're not two real people. You're just, giving a hypothetical case. So the names that are used are Reuven and Shimon.
Okay.
Okay? If it was only one person, you would say Ploni Almoni, anonymous.
Nachon, that I know, yeah.
But if it's two people, you say Reuven and Shimon.
Oh, okay.
Okay, please go on.
He who loans money to his companion and the borrower comes to pay him silver by weight, if the lender does not know the accuracy of the scale and the justness of the balance, or if he knows everything about the scale but does not know the properties of silver, then he is very near to being injured in the matter of weight and money. For at times he will refuse the silver and take the dross, or he may take less than the weight which is properly his. Or if he takes too light a weight or puts the silver on the heavy side of the scale, through all of these types of ignorance, he is bound to make an error. Or even if he is an expert in recognizing silver and in weighing it, if he does not look at it as carefully as he should, then it is possible that dross will be mixed in with his silver. But if he is an expert in all things, in weighing, in recognizing silver, and he looks at it as he should, then he will be paid as he should be, with pure silver and complete weight. Therefore, he has compared the tongue of the righteous to the best of silver. righteous man must recognize the good and the bad and should know all of the qualities, and he should look and examine them as is proper. And he must exert his body and his wisdom to leave off folly and to take hold of understanding and to remove the mixtures of dross from himself. Then will his soul be purged and purified before God, as it is written. Take away the dross from the silver, and there comes forth a vessel for the refiner. When the dross is removed, then the vessel is purged.
Okay, he loves in this book giving these parables. Okay, this parable is again trying to tell you that you need expertise. Ethics, character traits are a field that requires expertise, and without expertise, you cannot succeed. Okay, just like you need expertise to do business with silver, so too you need expertise in order to understand the proper balance for your character traits. Now he's going to talk about instability. Go ahead, please.
Then there is a man who changes his habits and is not stable. At one time he clings to this quality, and at another time he departs from that habit and takes hold of another habit. And thus he keeps doing always. And he is like a man who wants to go to a city but does not know the way to it, nor does he know any of the paths that will lead him to the highway. Therefore he is bewildered. One time he goes by one path and he strays. So he comes back and tries another path. And thus he does with a third path and with a fourth. Concerning such men, the wise man said, the labor of fools wearies every one of them, for he knows not how to go to the city.
Okay, so this is another problem. You know, if I'm Avi and my traits are unbalanced, and I try to get them into balance, that's what we've been talking about up till now. But what happens if I'm Avi and it's not that my traits are out of balance, it's that they're wacko. Okay, they're constantly changing. Sometimes I'm angry, and sometimes I'm the complete opposite, and sometimes I'm totally generous, and sometimes I'm totally stingy. There are people like this, right? And that is another thing that can prevent a person from becoming a more balanced and tasty dish. Now, the reason for him writing the book, and he's also going to immediately after that get to the yardstick. Go ahead, please.
Therefore, we must take pity on the people who are sunk in the nothingness of vanity, and we must teach them the importance of the just weight and the correctness of the scales, to let them know how silver is tested, and to teach them the path of the righteous, in order that a man should choose, at the very outset of his being tested, a path that will bring him to a place that is fresh and fertile, where all that is good can be found.
Stop. Okay, stop right there, even though it's the middle of a sentence, please. Okay. Everything he has said up till now, Aristotle would agree with. Aristotle would agree that you need to get your virtues, to have virtues and not vices, and get your character traits into balance. And you should consult the experts who know about ethical qualities, and that you shouldn't be wishy-washy or wacko changing all the time. Rather, you should be steadily moving towards your goal, okay? All of this Aristotle would agree with. Everything he said in the book so far. Until he gets to the yardstick, which is this sentence that I stopped Kathy in the middle of. So Kathy, just go back to the middle of that sentence, okay? A path that will bring him to a place that is fresh and fertile, and read that and also the next paragraph. Go ahead, please.
Okay. A path that will bring him to a place that is fresh and fertile, where all that is good can be found, and by good, we mean reverence of God, which is the goal of all good, of all deeds. And this is the question which the Lord, blessed be his name, asks every man, as it is written. What does the Lord your God require of you, but to fear the Lord your God?
Stop for a second. If you ask a traditional Jew what God wants, The answer is usually what? That's very philosophical. Miriam said to reflect the image of God, which is, wow, that's an exceptional idea. What? Yeah, what Esther said behind me is most traditional Jews would simply say to keep God's commandments, right? What does God want? What does God want? God wants the things He told me to do, right? That's, I think, how most traditional Jews throughout history and today also would answer the question. But that's not actually what the Torah says. The Torah doesn't say that God wants you to keep His commandments. The Torah says, what does the Lord your God require of you but to fear the Lord your God? Now, the reverence, in English we would probably usually say reverence rather than fear in this context. The reverence of God, respect, the reverence of God out of respect is often realized through keeping the commandments. If you revere someone, then you'll want to do what that person wants of you. Okay? But it is not the specific deed that most matters to God. It is rather the attitude and the relation which brings to the deed. Okay? The first thing you need to remember in order to read any more of this book, okay, is that this book, although it's been okay with Aristotle so far, this is not a philosophical book. I would even say that it is a moderately anti-philosophical book, okay? And in philosophy, you know, you'll talk about, in religious philosophy, you'll talk about, you know, some objective reason why it is good to do a commandment or why it is good not to sin. And that's fine for the people who like it. But that is not the attitude of this book. The attitude in this book is the traditional idea. The traditional idea, at least before Maimonides. The idea of the Bible, the idea of the rabbis, that God is a person. God is at least a personality. Okay, God is not some abstract concept that you can talk about. Rather, God is a person that you can talk to. Okay? God is not a concept that you can prove. Rather, God is a person that you can have a relationship with. And what that person, I'll use person as short for personality, what that person wants of all of us more than anything else, even more than the individual commandments, is reverence. Okay? That is meant to be the basis of the relationship. Reverence does not preclude other things, does not preclude love. In fact, love and reverence may be related to each other. A good love also has a revering side to it. It has, how do you say ha'aracha in English?
Appreciation.
Appreciation. Appreciation, and you know, a love relationship in which there is not appreciation of the other, even to a certain degree, reverence for the other is not something that ultimately stands. Okay, and this reverence. Yes.
Yeah, the word fear.
Yes.
It's not the kind of fear where you're afraid of something.
No, that's what Avi's explaining.
Yeah, that's why I'm using reverence rather than fear.
Or
Okay?
awe.
Or awe, yes.
Yeah, that's better.
Although I think reverence is better than awe because, you know, you can be in awe of another person, but I think it's more normal to revere another person. Okay? And awe is more fear, I'm suggesting. What he does later on in the book, we're not going to read that part, but what he says later on in the book is that single word in Hebrew, yirah, has good forms and bad forms. The bad form is what we would translate as fear. The good form is what we would translate as reverence. Okay? And he does that in the last chapter of the book, which is about the reverence for God. Now,
No.
yes? Okay. Now,
That's my cat, sorry.
but what?
It was just my cat.
Okay. Let's say, Kathy, if you could go on to the next paragraph, he's going to elaborate now on reverence.
And no deed is considered worthy unless it contains pure reverence. Therefore, it is necessary to make known to everyone that every man who wants to bring his soul towards the attainment of good qualities must mingle reverence to heaven with each and every quality. For it is fear of the Lord, reverence of God, that strengthens all of our qualities. And fear of the Lord, or reverence of God, is like the thread which we run through the holes of pearls, and then we tie a knot at its end, so that it will firmly hold all the pearls. There is no doubt that if the knot should tear, all of the pearls will fall. Such is the reverence of heaven. It strengthens all of the qualities. And if you will undo the knot of reverence, then all your good qualities will depart from you. And when you have no good qualities within you, then you have neither Torah nor commandments.
Okay, stop there. Does anybody understand who he was attacking in the words that Kathy just read? This parable of the silken cord that holds the pearls. And there's a knot at the end so the pearls don't fall off. The pearls are the midot, all of the midot. And the cord, just one second, the cord is the reverence for God. If there is no reverence for God, then the pearls will just fall to the ground and scatter. There will be no more necklace. In other words, what that means is that you cannot be a person of quality. You cannot be a tasty person whose qualities are in good balance without the fear of God. It is the fear of God that puts all of the qualities into balance. When he says that, who is he attacking?
Maybe Aristotle.
Yeah, he's attacking both Aristotle and Maimonides.
Rambam. Yeah.
Okay? Because Maimonides said, for those who remember the 8 chapters last semester or last year, Maimonides said that there is an objective measure of virtue and vice. Okay? It's objective. Any human being in the world can determine when a characteristic is virtue and when it is vice. It is universal. It is rational. And he, in the paragraph or the half a paragraph that Kathy just read, he is saying no. It is not universal. It's Jewish. And it is not objective. It's personal. Okay? The opposite objective, I guess, would be subjective. Thank you. The virtue and vice are completely, he says, subjective. And who is the subject that determines virtue and vice?
You, if you were keeping the mitzvah.
No, not you.
No, but well, okay.
Reverence of God.
God.
Reverence, right, exactly. So if I'm
God is the person who determines what is virtue and what is vice. Okay? So I can't ask myself, I can't ask my neighbor. Neither of us are the yardstick. The person I have to ask, like, when is it too little anger and when is it too much anger, and questions like that, the person I have to ask, believe it or not, is God. That's who decides. Whoa. Okay. That's why this is an attack on Aristotle and Maimonides, because neither of them say, ask God. They say, investigate the matter scientifically and objectively and develop the science of psychology, and then you will come to an objective opinion about, when this is virtue and when this is vice. No, says the author of this book, it's entirely personal. but the person is not you. It's also not your friend. The person is God. God wants certain things. God wants anger in some situations and not in other situations. God wants generosity in some situations, many situations, but not in all situations. When you're trying to decide whether a quality is virtue or vice, the yardstick is God. That will take, I think, some time to digest and maybe some time to argue about, okay? But this is his traditional alternative to the objective virtue and vice of Aristotle and Maimonides. What he's basically saying, to translate it into modern terms, he's making a very radical claim, okay? He's claiming that there is no morality without God. This is a claim that we can hear in our generation too. It's a claim that many people like and many people very much dislike. Okay, but just to understand what we're reading, that is the claim that he's making. There is no morality, there is no ethics without God, or more specifically in his terms, without the fear of heaven, without the reverence for God. Okay, yeah.
What I see here in the text is it's that reverence for God is the yardstick, okay? Where does it say talk to God and knock on his door and see what he has to say? Where does it say anything like that? You know, I'm being silly, obviously, but where does it say God is the one you have to talk to? I see the reverence for God, yes.
You said that nicely, Tzvi. Let me try to say it in very simple terms. We were talking earlier, I'm just going to use myself as an example, but of course it's every one of us, about, making myself into a more tasty dish, right? Balancing my qualities so that I'll be a better Avi. That's what we've been talking about. And then I asked, who decides what the better Avi looks like? Okay? Is it me? I decide what the better Avi should look like? Or maybe I should ask Tzvi. Tzvi has a better idea than me of what the better Avi should look like? Okay? Let's say even better. Okay? What would I like Avi to look like? Or what would Tzvi like Avi to look like? You can go in both of those directions, but he's saying no. It's not what I would like myself to look like. It's not what Tzvi would like myself to look like. It's not what Miriam said earlier. It's what society would like Avi to look like, or what the law would like Avi to look like. It's what God would like me to look like.
And we know that how do we necessarily know what that is?
So that's a great question. How in the world do we know what that is? There's something I don't know if any of you noticed, but a couple times in the text that we read, he does something which sounds very traditional and fits a traditional book, but actually it's not so traditional. He says, if I can find the quote, he says, first of all, he says up here, he says, the reverence, notice this, the reverence of God is the goal of all deeds. That is still traditional, okay? But it's somewhat radical. It's saying that when you keep God's commandments, it's not enough. You have to keep the commandments out of reverence. Can anybody tell me how it's possible to keep the commandments of the Torah not out of reverence for God?
Sure. Doing something which on paper looks like what you're supposed to do, but in fact, let's say I give money to Beit Knesset, that's great, but I actually stole it, or cheated old people out of their money, and then I give it to you, which is great, but I did it for a really bad.
But then but even though you donated it to a Beit Knesset, you still stole the money, and the Torah says not to steal.
Right.
What I'm asking is, how could you keep the mitzvot of the Torah, not violate anything, and still not do it out of reverence for God?
Well, some people would just do it because it's the right thing to do in their community without thinking about God at all.
Very nicely. The way the author of the book would phrase it, to do the mitzvot not out of reverence for God, but out of the fear of people. Okay? If I give charity and I build synagogues and I act like a very pious person, then people will call me pious and they'll say I'm a big tzaddik and they'll regard me with good regard. Okay? It's very possible to do the right thing, not out of reverence for God, but because of how people will look at you. And that, he says, is no good. Furthermore, he says, this is driving me crazy. Wait, we have this. Maybe this will help. Wait a second. Okay. He says that, where is it? Every man who wants to bring his soul towards the attainment of good qualities must mingle reverence for heaven with each and every quality. Meaning, it's not about getting angry or being generous. Rather, it's getting angry out of reverence for God, or is your anger the opposite of the reverence for God? Is your generosity out of reverence for God, or is your generosity for other reasons? For it is the fear of God, he says, reverence of God, that strengthens all of our qualities. This is the highly anti-Aristotelian part. Now he says, if I can find the best of the quotes so far, he says that when you have no good qualities within you, you have neither Torah nor commandments. Okay, what he's basically saying, and we're eventually going to see a couple of texts that will say this even more explicitly so that you'll believe me, okay? What he's saying is that God does not just command the commandments. It's not just 613 do's and don'ts. God, he says in his book, and this is the traditional sounding thing that it really isn't traditional at all. He says that God commands the midot along with the commandments. There's phrases in the book that we'll see where he says that you need to do the commandment to fulfill the commandments and to fulfill the mitzvot, just like that. He says that the word of God is the commandments and the midot. Ask a traditional Jew, what is the word of God, the writing of God? They'll tell you it's the Torah, it's the commandments. The author of this book says it's both the commandments and the midot. God wants both of them. God as a personality demands both doing the commandments and ethical virtue. So, the upshot of that is, if you want to know how angry to be or not to be, if you want to know how generous to be or not to be, if you want to know how merciful to be or not to be, if you want to know how humble to be or not to be, the measure is the will of God. Miriam asks, is it like Derech Eretz? Derech Eretz, that's actually a very good question. Derech Eretz, which Chazal praise very much, is something which is measured by humanity. Okay, the very phrase Derech Eretz, the way of the world, means that you're acting in a way that society looks upon well. And that's actually not what he's talking about here. He's telling you to look for God, what God regards well. Now, God may ask you to have derech eretz. God may not want you to be a person who makes society insane. Okay? But again, it's because God wants it. Okay? Now, okay.
I have
What?
Elisheva was wanting to ask a question, and I also want to ask
Okay,
something.
bevakasha.
Actually, I wanted to go back to his analogy of the string of pearls. I think
Okay.
it's a very interesting analogy.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, from time immemorial, pearls are never strung that way. Pearls are strung with a knot after every single pearl. So
Really?
that if the string breaks anywhere, no more than one pearl can fall. And I
That
think
is fascinating. Go on, yeah.
an interesting way to look at his analogy, if you want to protect your virtues, assuming that you are not going to be perfect and the string may in fact break, can you safeguard your virtues by making sure to put a knot after every pearl all the way around? That
Wow.
is, pearls are actually sprung. So
The,
that's
the reason that's such a great question is because he doesn't use the pearl analogy once. He uses it twice. We're just so far reading the first one. Okay. Wow. You say from time immemorial they did it like that.
I think they've always been done like that because
Okay.
pearls have always been very precious. And you certainly wouldn't string them in a way that you could lose them all.
It totally makes sense. I just wonder how he could tell the parable in this way if that's not how it was done in this place.
Well, I think he wanted an example of one misstep, you lose everything.
Right.
But I think it is also possible to organize your life so that knowing you're likely to make a misstep now and then, that you don't lose everything. And
that's really nice.
Pearls are actually strung is a better example, I think.
Okay, that's really nice. I mean, you could even, weave it into his parable, his analogy.
Yeah.
You could say you should strengthen the fear of heaven, and make a knot after every pearl.
Exactly.
You could go there. Okay, that's something I never thought about before, even though I thought about this analogy a lot. That's very nice. Okay, let's continue reading the second part of this paragraph now. Oh, unless somebody else had a question.
Kathy
I
had a
wanted
question.
to say one thing about the
Yeah.
whole, about how this author relates to ethics and also the mitzvot or commandments, because I thought immediately about the problem we have today in conversion. That
Yes.
if we look only at mitzvot or commandments, we obviously see the problem we have today when conversion is made nearly impossible. But
Yeah.
author, it seems to me, would look at things very, very differently in terms of
Very nice. Very nice.
yeah. But
The business of
must not be
conversion.
studied enough among some of our religionists.
The business of conversion today, that you look so much, do you observe this, do you observe that, is anti-traditional.
Yeah.
Okay? The traditional sense would be like you're saying, that the best convert is the one who reveres God. And it's not a matter of measuring every single thing he does or doesn't do. Okay,
One other quick question. How do I know that maybe I think that what I'm doing is in full reverence of God, but maybe is everything you do is necessarily okay as long as it's out of reverence?
Yeah.
That's a question. Is that the case? Is it necessarily good as long as it's out of reverence?
You could do bad things out of reverence.
Sure.
And yet, if you do that, then you're not listening well enough.
Who helps
God,
me decide?
Part of the safeguard is that he doesn't just require reverence. He also requires commandments. The commandments are no good without reverence, but the commandments must be done out of reverence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if your reverence of God is going to lead you to murder, well, if you revere God, you won't murder because God commanded. Okay? There is a certain amount of a fence here or a safeguard with the commandments.
Because, right. Yigal Amir was positive he was fulfilling a commandment when he killed Yitzhak Rabin.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Total reverence. He was a religious man.
Right.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So what? How does someone help me know? Yeah, is there someone to help me figure out this yardstick? You know, like, or I just whatever. I don't know how to.
So I think what you just touched upon, Zvi, is that when he said earlier to go to the experts, okay, he wasn't meaning Aristotle. Aristotle's not the expert to go to. He wants you to go to God-fearing people who have good character qualities and learn from them. Okay? Yes, every system, okay, always has its weakness. Okay, the Aristotelian system, where you have this objective virtue and vice, has its weaknesses. Okay, because it's not really objective, right? And it can be utilitarian. You know, if Aristotle says I should strive for virtue because it ultimately serves me, I will benefit. Well, what happens if I come to the conclusion that I'll benefit from vice? There's lots of people in the world who benefit from vice. In other words, if it's utilitarian on a human level, you can weave a moral theory out of that, but it has its weakness. Okay, the opposite is true here. Here you have a system where God is the yardstick. God is the measure of what is virtue and what is vice. It has its standards, which are the commandments. Okay, you can't, out of reverence of God, violate a commandment. And yet, like Tzvi said, right? A person out of reverence of God can go ahead and do all kinds of things. Okay, so each system is going to have its what's the word I'm looking for? Its weakness. Okay. Now, Kathy, could you continue reading the second part of the paragraph?
For the whole Torah depends on the constant improvement of the qualities.
Okay. Now, notice that there's no Torah without good qualities. Go on.
As regards the qualities, the good and the bad, the wise men can make good ones of bad ones, but the fool can make evil qualities out of good ones. As for him who walks in the darkness and does not consider the improvement of his qualities, it is possible that one quality will destroy all of his merit. For example, one who takes great pride in his deeds and boasts and preens himself always with the shame of his companions and seeks to obtain honor through his companions' disgrace. Such a man is like one who fills a barrel with fine wine, but there is in the bottom of the barrel a little hole. There is no doubt that all of the fine wine will become lost because of the small hole if he does not stop it up. So this man who is arrogant, even though he is filled with Torah, will lose everything through this evil quality if he does not hasten to repair it.
Okay, so another one of these analogies, the barrel of wine that has a hole in the bottom. If you have one bad quality, it can ruin all of your qualities. You'll lose all of the wine. I just wanted everyone to pay attention to this sentence that we read quickly at the beginning. The wise man can make good qualities out of bad qualities, but the fool can make evil qualities out of good ones. What does that mean? It means, and we'll see this more as we go on, his theory is that every single character trait is fundamentally neutral. There's a character trait that we call good because it's often good, but the fool can make it bad. And there's a character trait that we call bad because it's often bad, but a wise person can turn it good. Okay? Anger we usually call bad, but if you use anger wisely, the anger becomes good, and so on and so forth. Every quality is essentially neutral. Okay. Please go on.
There are so few in the world who recognize the truth. There are those who are just not wise enough to recognize it. Just as a man whose 2 legs are amputated cannot ascend a ladder, neither can such a one ascend the stairway of wisdom if he has no understanding. But there is also a man who is wise, but has been impressed with the lusts of the world from his youth until he directs all of his wisdom to attaining his desire and to do the will of his evil desire, for he has been accustomed from his youth to do evil deeds until they are firmly fixed in his soul. Thus it is very difficult for him to escape from the trap and snare of his sins. Then there is the man who does have the wisdom to recognize what is right and has also the desire to walk in good paths. But he has never been in the presence of the wise to hear from them instruction concerning wisdom and the righteous path. Because of all this, he walks in the darkness, and he is like a man who has a hidden treasure in his house and does not know about the hidden treasure. He sells the house to another.
That's a tragedy, right? Just didn't know what was hidden in your house when you sold it. Okay, go on.
Consider then that if a man has many differing and dissimilar qualities, that each and every quality will tear at the mind of the man. This one pulls him here, and this one pulls him there. And in this struggle, the evil desire helps a man choose the lowliest one. And this is like a man who walks in the wilderness, and bears, lions, leopards, and wolves, and many other beasts of prey confront him. This man should open his eyes and fight against each one. For if he averts his eyes for one moment, these harmful beasts will tear him to bits. So it is with man. His evil qualities like lust, arrogance, hate, anger, and similar ones keep rolling about in his heart always. And if he blinds himself to them and does not correct them, then he will root out from his heart the light of truth and grope about in thick darkness. And concerning this it is said, I have set the Lord always before me.
That's a very powerful metaphor, that our inner traits are like these vicious animals that will tear us to pieces unless we deal with each one all the time and don't let it get its way. Okay?
When man is born, he is in his body and in his wisdom weaker than all other creatures. For all creatures from the very day they were born can walk, eat, and help themselves. But man requires much in his physical needs, and he needs even more correction in his soul to adjust his wisdom and to understand the good paths. For man, at his beginning, without someone to teach him, conducts himself like one of the cattle. But his heart is like a tablet, which is ready to be written upon. If this tablet is in the hands of a fool, then he will scribble upon it until he spoils the tablet and it has no further worth. But the wise man will write upon it the correct order of his affairs and his needs and his obligations. And from the information written on this tablet, he will be enabled to feed and support his children and attain great wealth. Such is a heart of man. The fools draw upon it drawings of falsehood and write upon it engravings of wrongdoing. And they fill their hearts with thoughts of folly and emptiness, while the intelligent people write upon the tablet of their hearts the writing of God, which is the foundation of the Torah and the commandments, the wisdom of attaining noble qualities, until their souls shine like the radiance of the firmament. This was the intention and meaning of Solomon when he said, bind them upon your fingers, write them upon the table of your heart.
There's some crucial things here. First of all, when he talks about writing on the tablet of the heart, you have a new tablet and you have an old tablet. The old tablet, millions of things have been written on it, so it's not even clear anymore. The new tablet, you have the opportunity to write good things upon it. And he uses this analogy to talk about whether our traits are whether we're born with them. And he says that we're not. This is something Maimonides also dealt with. We're not born with our traits. When we are born, from the moment we are born, traits start getting written upon us. We're a fresh tablet. It's the parents and the society and even the initial deeds of the young child that will determine what traits a person has. Okay, you're not born with them. It's not genetic. It's mostly societal, the way he's described it in this metaphor. Now, notice what he says here in the translation. I think makes it less. It's not as powerful in the translation. He says that the fools fill their hearts with thoughts of folly and emptiness, while the intelligent people write upon the tablet of their hearts. What do they write on the tablet of their hearts? The writing of God. This is the text I referred to earlier. The writing of God on the tablets of their heart from the time they're young children. Now, what are the tablets of God? We would think of the Ten Commandments. We would think the writing of God is the Torah. He says it's the foundation of the Torah and the commandments and the wisdom of attaining noble qualities. That too, including the second one, is the writing of God. I don't know how much this shocks you, but I've never found anything like this in any other book. The writing of God itself is not just the Torah and the commandments. It's also good qualities. That is the obligation that God has written. Both Torah and commandments and balancing your character traits. This may even relate to what Tzvi brought up before. Think about it. Think about it. If you say that the only determination of good and evil is the Torah and the commandments, well, that might be good, but it could also lead some people to doing awful things. On the other hand, if you tell people that the only measurement of what God wants is character traits, okay, that could lead to good things, but it could also lead to awful things. Right? Because, if you think God wants this character trait, it could lead to things we can't even imagine. What he's doing here, he's actually putting in a certain amount of like balance of power or checks and balances, okay? The Torah and commandments, just in case you pervert them in some awful direction, they have to be measured by good character traits. And the good character traits, unless you pervert them in some awful direction and say that some awful trait is a good trait, right? It's balanced by the limits of the Torah and the commandments. Nothing is perfect, but what he is doing here is providing not just one safeguard, but two. And usually you'd think that traditionally you only have one, which is the commandments. Here he's saying that you've got two.
Noble qualities.
Okay, well, what's me?
That's the second safeguard, the noble qualities. That's the say. You mentioned the commandments, but not only the commandments by themselves, also noble qualities.
Right. Since both the commandments and the qualities are governed by the reverence of God, so you still have an opening, right? What's the reverence of God, going to lead you to do? But at least when you talk about the reverence of God, you'll think about it in terms of qualities and in terms of commandments, and that will put a good amount of limit on where it might take you. I'm not saying it's foolproof. It can't be foolproof. There's no system that's foolproof. Okay. Let's go on.
This too did Solomon say, even a child is known by his doing, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. This verse was said concerning the ability of the young to distinguish values, for their qualities or traits can be recognized in their youth. You can discern in some youth the quality of modesty and embarrassment, while in others impudence is apparent, and some incline themselves toward lust, while some incline themselves toward good qualities. and know concerning all the qualities that you see in a man in the days of young manhood and in old age, that they were there in the days of his childhood and dawning youth, except that in those days he did not have the strength to show them and to exhibit them in deeds. And as for the youth with whom folly has become great, it is still possible for a man to swerve them to the good path. For it is easy for youth to learn, and they have not the strength or the wisdom to depart or to flee from beneath the hand of the one that corrects them, so they must bear it. But in the days of old age, people cannot be swerved from their paths easily, or from those traits which were in them in the days of their youth. They are like a silver tray that was hidden in the soil and become coated with a thick tarnish during the long time that it was hidden there. Such silver needs to be polished and repolished until the silver returns to its original beautiful appearance. Thus it is with a man who has followed his own way and his habit and has become deeply sunk in the depths of inferior qualities. It becomes necessary to polish his intelligence so that he can distinguish between that which is unclean and that which is clean, and to continue this task until the good qualities are impressed and bound in his heart.
So it's much easier to improve your qualities when you're young than when you are older. The next paragraph explicitly, the book talks about itself under its original title. 1 second. Okay. Okay. So I should stop?
Well, show me the list of.
Okay. Hold on, everybody, just 1 second. Don needs the list of. Okay. Don, Elisheva, Tzvi, Miriam, Kathy, Simcha, Sharon. That's all the pictures, but there might be people who don't have the picture.
No, they would show it.
I don't know where the participants.
Open the participants list. You'll get everybody.
Yeah, I just don't see where it is.
At the bottom, move your cursor. It's the leftmost one, not in
Up
the
on
corner
top.
of the
It's on
center
ours,
one.
yeah.
Here it is. Participants.
Hi,
Okay.
Kayla
yeah.
couldn't come today. Shalom.
That's
Kayla
it.
is in the class also.
Okay, so Simcha is the only one. Okay.
Okay, now we can go back to learning. Okay, 1 second. Okay, let me just close this. And now, where we are. The next paragraph is going to, the book describes itself by its own title. Go ahead, please.
This book of qualities was written and sealed with the seal of wisdom in order to teach man knowledge and to be a valuable utensil in the hand of every man, so as to correct, through its use, his traits and his deeds. For a craftsman who has the tool of his craft in his hand can do his work, but if he does not have the tool of his art, he can do nothing. Therefore, hearken to correction and take the tool of your art into your hands in order to correct your qualities.
That's what this book is. A carpenter needs a hammer, and an engineer needs a slide rule, and every profession has the tools that it needs. In order to improve your character traits, the tool that you need is this book, no other book. This is your hammer. This is your slide rule. That's what the purpose of the book is. Okay?
Go on. Can you not see that he who has all sorts of coins, small ones and large ones, but does not know the worth of every coin, will not know what to buy with each one until he knows the value of each coin? And he must also know which coin the king has voided and decreed concerning that it should not be minted. And after he has weighed every single coin and appraised its worth, then he will know how to purchase with each coin whatever he needs at its proper value. And for the coin which the king decreed that it should not be minted, he will be careful not to circulate it except in a manner for he will be not deserving of punishment. We will then find that this type of man will attain goodness and joy with every single coin. The fool, who does not weigh and does not know the value of the coin and circulates what the king has declared void, there can be no doubt that he will suffer great harm.
Okay, be aware that the first chapter of the book, right after this introduction, is about the coin that the king has avoided. The thing, the worst midah in the world. And we'll see what that is in future classes. Okay, let's finish the introduction, please.
But you, my son, accept this parable which has been told you about the many qualities that are within you, the great and the small, and weigh every single quality in the balance scale of your wisdom until you learn to know the value of every quality. And you will know those qualities which the great king has declared void, and you will guard yourself against them so that they will not appear in you and will not be found in you except under such circumstances where you will not receive injury or punishment. And in this way, you will attain complete fulfillment and you will be an artist with the proper tool of your art in your hand. Now we desire to make known the roots of man's qualities and their branches, their worth and their harm. And it is our intention to turn natural powers of man from folly to love of correction, so that even the simple will try to know the traits of the wise. And from God may the mention of his name be exalted. We shall ask help, that he may let us know the righteous paths and the ways of justice, so that we may teach the tribes of Yeshurun, the congregation of loving kindness.
He's asking God for help to write this book in a way that will make it a fantastic tool for each and every Jew to improve character traits. Notice he says, we desire to make known the roots of man's qualities and their branches, their worth and their harm. In other words, their virtue and their vice. That's what he will do for the next 20-odd chapters. Each chapter will be devoted to a single character trait, both its worth and its harm. Every character trait has good things in it and bad things in it, good potential and evil potential. And that's what he does in each and every chapter. So we finished the introduction, okay? And now I am moving you to the text that you are the first group to study in 600 years, okay? The conclusion in the form of an epitome. We talked about this last week a little bit. Simanei Sefer Hamidot. Siman in Hebrew means a sign. That's how we normally use it today. But siman could also be like an abstract of a chapter. And that's what he does. For every chapter of the book, he gives you a little abstract. That's what the conclusion of the book is. Okay? Now, the conclusion of the book itself has introductory remarks. The introductory remarks are reminiscent of the introduction to the book that we just read. It has concluding remarks. The concluding remarks are basically, representing the conclusion itself, the epitome itself. And then in the middle, you have these very short abstracts of every single chapter in the book. In other words, the conclusion in the form of an epitome. Okay, it's like Sefer Hamidot in the miniature. That's how it's designed. Now, why am I harping on this? The reason I'm harping on this is because the last chapter of the book, which is about the fear or better reverence of heaven, which we're not going to study, but which the text we're about to look at right now comes right after. In that chapter, he develops the idea of a microcosm. What is a microcosm? A microcosm is a miniature world. Okay? A globe, for instance, if you have a globe at home, with the continents on it and the oceans, a globe is a micro Earth. Okay? If you have, a representative of the solar system, that's a kind of microcosm. What he claims in the last chapter of the book is this. He says that the universe is like a living organism, and God is what gives the living organism life. So too, he says, the body of a human being is a living organism. And what gives life to that organism is the soul. In other words, the soul resembles God, and the human body resembles the universe, the physical cosmos. And he goes through this whole elaborate, it's very, very long, this whole elaborate description about how various aspects of the human body, okay, are similar to things in the physical universe. Okay, that's what he does in the last chapter. We're going to hear echoes of that in the text that we're about to read. We'll see that there's even more to it, how the human being resembles God and the universe. Okay, would you like to continue reading, Kathy? Have you had enough?
I might as well just finish
Okay.
now.
Okay, so what we're reading here...
Unless somebody else wants to, it's okay with me.
It's okay, go on, you're doing great. These are the introductory remarks to the microcosm of the book, okay, the parallel to the book's introduction. Go ahead.
On the day of good, enjoy the good, and on the day of evil, see. One against the other has God set. King Solomon said this verse about what he saw, namely, that everything created in the world is one against the other.
In other words, there's all kinds of opposites in the universe, okay? And each one has its good and its evil, okay? On the day of good, enjoy the good. And on the day of evil, see one against the other, as God said. Realize that on your bad day, what's going on in a different context would be good. Okay? Enjoy the good when it comes to you. And when it doesn't come to you, try to realize how even the adverse circumstance in a different context could be good. How so? Go ahead.
How so? There is good in the world. Against the good, there is evil. There is light in the world. Against that, there is darkness and gloom. There are seas and rivers in the world. Against that, there is dry land. There is wilderness and settlement. There are mountains and hills. There are valleys and vales. There is heat and cold. Everything was created this way, and in every one of them there is good and evil. And each man who is wise of heart takes from each of them what he has benefit from. For instance, light is better than darkness, but in darkness there is good, for at night there is rest for all to sleep, unlike during the day. And at night, a person can escape his enemies who are coming for him. This is true for every single thing. All is one against the other.
So everything you see in the world, you should try to find the good in it. You should try to find the way to use it for the better. Okay? How is this a microcosm? That's the next paragraph.
So too was a person created in this way, such that in all of his traits and conventions, they are all one against the other, such as arrogance and humility, anguish and joy. Each and every trait contains aspects that distance him from the good and honest way, about which it is said that the wicked forsake his way. And every trait contains aspects through which the astute and discerning man draws near to the service of the Lord.
Okay, this is something else. What he's saying is, it's not just the physical body of man that resembles the physical cosmos, like he said in the last chapter. What he's adding here is that even the inner life of a human being, even our character traits, our midot, they reflect the physical universe. How so? How so? In the physical universe, there's all kinds of things, but each of them has a potential for both good and bad. Each is essentially neutral. Light is neutral. Essentially, it's not good or bad. Well, usually it's beneficial. Usually it's good, but sometimes it's not. Darkness is not bad. Darkness is neutral. So when you're faced with darkness, try to find the good in it. Try to find the good uses of it. And the same thing for everything in the world. Forests and meadows and cities and wilderness, okay? And I don't know, streets and vehicles. It doesn't matter what it is. Every single thing has its good potential and has the potential to be misused, okay? And he says the same thing is true with the inner life of a human being. Each character trait is essentially neutral. It has the potential for both good and bad. In this way, the inner life of a human being resembles the cosmos. Now, there's one more thing in this paragraph that you might have missed, okay? He says each and every trait contains aspects that distance him, the person, from the good and honest way about which it is said in Isaiah, "Let the wicked forsake his way." That is totally wild. Do you realize what he did in his interpretation of this verse? If we just read the verse in Isaiah, and Isaiah said, "Let the wicked forsake his way," we would normally think that it means, let the wicked forsake his evil behavior, his evil deeds. That's probably what Isaiah meant. But that's not the way the author of Sefer HaMidot understands the verse. He understands it as, let the wicked forsake his way, let the wicked forsake the evil in his character traits. In other words, it's not about keeping the commandments and not violating them. It's rather about keeping the midot and not violating them. Okay, go on, please.
And since we have seen that there are many aspects within each trait, we have therefore decided to arrange the traits briefly, creating summaries. Let these summaries be arranged in your mouth and be fluent in them.
In other words, the reason he's about to write an abstract of each chapter of the book is in order to help the reader review it and become fluent in all of them. Okay?
If you are in a situation that leads you to arrogance, these summaries will remind you to lower your spirit, for you shall consider how many people become arrogant in the world, and with their arrogance and imperiousness, but then were then forgotten as if they never were. Where are they now? Therefore, cleave to humility. And if you are in a situation that leads you to anger, these summaries will remind you to remove anger from your heart. And if you are in a situation that leads you to love this world, these summaries will remind you to leave all loves behind, for all is vanity and vanishing, and to seize the love of the Lord, for that is the choicest love. And if you do any commandment, these summaries will remind you to do that commandment for the sake of heaven with good intention. And if you are in a situation that burdens your heart and distances it from the glorious name of God, these summaries will remind you to cast off the burden and to elevate your thoughts, devoting your heart to God.
Okay, so that's the end of the introductory remarks. After that, for each chapter in the book, the author writes a short summary, a short abstract. He leaves out most of what's in each chapter. The one thing he never leaves out is the possibility for the midah to be both good or bad. He always says, here's how to use it in a good way, and here's how to use it in a bad way. Because each midah is essentially neutral. Now we're at the concluding remarks. Before we read the concluding remarks, I just want to remind you that it's something that I should have pointed out when we read it, and I neglected to, excuse me. In the introductory remarks, when Kathy was reading, he said that the person who writes the good writing on the tablet of his heart, the writing of God on the tablet of his heart, which includes the commandments and the midot, he says that that person will shine like the firmament of the sky. That phrase, to shine like the firmament of the sky, is actually a quotation. It's from the final verse of the book of Daniel, where Daniel has these visions of redemption. And it says that the righteous will shine like the firmament of the sky. What he means by quoting that verse is that it's not the intellectuals that will shine like the firmament of the sky. It's not the philosophers. Rather, it's the people who discern the good and bad midot. It's the people who balance their midot. Those are the people who will shine like the sky. That's very important for what we're about to read in the concluding remarks, because as we will see, he concludes his concluding remarks in the entire book with that same verse from Daniel that he quoted in the introduction. Now, please go ahead.
We have hereby completed the summaries of the midot in short form, to remind a man to take care with them, to make do with each one of them in measure. Know that the midot are joined together and adhere to one another, and they all follow one another. If a man lets his evil inclination violate just one, then they will all be lost to him. This is like a man with a silken cord, who threaded pearls on it through their holes, and tied a knot at the end. This knot secures them all, and if the knot is released, a single pearl will fall, but then all of them will fall one after the other. So too, if you release your knot for a single midah, then you will be unable to hold fast to any midah properly.
Here you see that the same metaphor that he used in the introduction to the book, he now uses at the conclusion of the book. Although here the emphasis is about like one falling and then the others fall. So is it the same analogy? I personally would argue yes, although other people are free to speak up. The reason I would argue yes is because if it was just, one falls, they all fall, so a different metaphor would be called for. It'd probably be better to use a metaphor of dominoes, right? You set up all your dominoes, and then when the first one falls, right, it knocks down all the other ones. I think he's writing this with thinking that the reader still remembers the metaphor at the beginning of the book. For us, it's easier because we read them. We jump from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. We're reading them together, basically. And he remembers that the single silken cord is the reverence for God. Okay? That it's the reverence for God, that all the pearls have to be tied to the reverence of God, to be threaded by the reverence of God, and then with a knot at the end. And so I would suggest that he's still focusing on that even here, although here the emphasis is on that if you lose one, you lose them all. Okay, bivakasha. But by the way, Kathy's question is even stronger here than it was in the introduction, right? Because here he's emphasizing that it's only one single knot at the end. Okay.
Therefore, keep all the midot with all your strength, so that you may discern among them.
Okay, that sentence is away. Stop there. That sentence is loaded. It's less loaded in English than in Hebrew. Okay? Keep the midot with all of your strength. The word in Hebrew is lishmor hamidot. What does that sound like?
To guard.
Or mitzvot.
Yeah, it sounds like the traditional phrase, lishmor hamitzvot.
Mm-hmm.
A traditional Jew says, lishmor hamitzvot, and the author of this book turns it into
Midot.
Hamidot. To my mind, that is wild. Okay? He's saying that it's not just the commandments that God commands. God also commands the midot. And you have to keep the midot just like you keep the commandments. And it loses its force in English. The second part of the sentence is also wild. So that you may discern among them lehaskil b'hem. Lehaskil, sechel, haskala. Maimonides used that for rational inquiry, for philosophy. He's using it for the wisdom of the character traits. And then at the end, go ahead, in this manner.
In this manner you shall perfect your soul for the glorious name and cleave to it. And you shall merit to be among those of whom it is said, and the discerning will shine like the bright expanse of the sky.
Maimonides said that Daniel was referring to the discerning intellectuals, to the philosophers. The philosophers will shine like the bright expanse of the sky. The author of this book says no. He quotes this verse both in the introduction at the beginning and now, right now, at the very last sentence of the book. The discerning who will shine like the bright expanse of the sky are not the philosophers. Rather, they are those who keep the midot and who discern the good and the bad in every single midah. Okay, so we have to stop here. I'm reliant on a transportation. I'll have to go now. But we read both the introduction to the book and now the conclusion to the book. And for the next two classes, we'll do samples of parts of various midot that he discusses within the book.
And you'll send us the text.
I will send you the text.
We will
Yes.
read.
Yes.
Can I say one sentence? Do you
Sure.
have time? Then I would revise what I said before, that he would probably actively reject the idea of tying a knot after every pearl, because as I understand it, he's saying, if you let go of even one, you have no hope for the others. You have no way to protect the others.
Yeah,
So
but I still think your question is powerful. I mean, the metaphor kind of weakens if you say, "Hey, why not make a knot on each of them?"
But what he's saying,
they didn't think of that 600 years
in
ago.
the bottom of the barrel, you have one tiny hole, you lose everything, is what he seems to be saying.
He needs not to say what you said, but what you said is also good. So I want to think about that more. Okay.
Thank you, Avi.
Yeah, thanks, Svi.
Bye-bye.
Svi, Avi.